Pizza
and Co.
What type of cowboy stories were you thinking?
Drunk ones.
Drunk ones?
Drunk ones.
Do you mean like we'll be drunk or the cowboys will be drunk?
Yes.
Well, that's fun.
Welcome to
Second-Hand
Second-Hand Haunting,
Haunting,
where we read stories from a second-hand book my mum found in a second-hand shop.
Your mum?
My mum. And try and make sense of them.
Fun of them?
Sense of them?
Fun of them.
Mum of them?
Not fun of your mum.
No, never. Never. She listens. Thanks, Mum. Hey, Ollie.
Hey, Callum. So,
As you might have caught in the intro, my mum has recently been to the US, and she and all of her friends are now apparently attempting to scour the world, well, the world's second-hand bookstores, looking for ghost books for me. So, cheers to Leslie for that one.
I think we can do a little clink for that.
She found 2 books, in fact. One of them we'll get to later, but today's book is going to be Ghost Stories of the Old West.
And just so you know, listeners, and I don't condone this behaviour, but I am enjoying a whiskey while we listen.
A rot gut.
Which apparently I learnt today, a rot gut used to be a old...
Shitty whiskey.
shitty whiskey, right.
Yeah. So this is a newer book. It's not like 100 years old. It's not from the Old West. It's by Dan Asfar, and he's written about the Old West. Now, I'll give you an option.
Cut them out if you like.
Never. I'll give you the option, Ollie. Would you like to hear some stuff connected to Tombstone or Deadwood?
I like the name Tombstone, so I'm going to stick with Tombstone.
You like the name? Wait, hang on. Do you know what Tombstone is? The town of Tombstone?
I don't. Do you want to enlighten me as to the backstory of Tombstone? And to be fair, I only know Deadwood from a TV series, so I've heard of Deadwood, but I didn't know it was a real place.
Okay, well, there is also a film called Tombstone.
I feel like I've heard of that too.
Yeah.
But I forgot about it until you reminded me just then.
Okay. All right, what if I say the phrase gunfight at the OK Corral?
Then it rings a bell, but I couldn't recall how it was referenced.
Oh, okay. Well, the OK Corral is in Tombstone, and the gunfight is a gunfight that happened there between Wyatt Earp and his brothers and Doc Holliday and a bunch of miscreants whose name I forget.
So Doc Holliday was actually injuring people that he would then have to go fix up later?
Yeah, I think people played real fast and loose with the term doc back then.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he was a doctor.
He
He was a gambler and a drunk and a morphine addict.
I found out just the other day that to become a doctor, you didn't have to do that much around that time. You know, you could just say that you were a doctor.
Yeah, it took way too long for any governing body of doctors to arrive.
Yeah. I was watching a TV series on Disney. It was The Outfit Dodger. And he just worked as a doctor before, didn't have any official training. And I think that was the way it was for a long time, up until doctors actually unionized. And then they convinced the government to start issuing licenses to practice, which were then governed under the union. I could be wrong about this. I haven't done like a full history, so if anyone wants to like jump in and be like, well, actually, then they would be happy to do so. But
yeah, please send us an email at secondhandhaunt@gmail.com. Links in the description.
But yeah, at some point, you could just be like, hey, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
Let me saw your leg off.
If you saw wood, you're a carpenter. If you saw legs, you're a doctor.
Perfect.
Which, look, there's probably no small amount of that back in Tombstone back in the day. Now, I will say that the book does have a good description of Tombstone, the famous people associated with it, and events like the gunfight at the OK Corral. I'm not going to read any of that stuff today.
Sure. Just to be clear, is that the gunfight at the OK Corral, is that from the movie Tombstone?
It's from history.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is the movie a retelling of history?
Yes.
Okay, so both are true.
There was an incident in Tombstone where a bunch of lawmen and a bunch of criminals just shot the shit out of each other. Mm-hmm. And then, in the early days of cinema, a film called Gunfight at the OK Corral was made. And then in the 90s, a much better film called Tombstone was made, which covers much the same events.
I do like a movie based on real live events, even if they drift.
Yeah.
Even if they drift substantially.
I think they do it pretty accurately. Even if it's not, the cast is fantastic.
It reminds me of how the accuracy of bullets was much further away from the accuracy that we would have today. But you always see in those like movies and TV shows that they have these like perfect, they have like, they've got gunslingers that have perfect aim.
Nah.
Which just seems unlikely.
No, they give you 6 bullets because maybe one will hit. Which I think we'll actually get into some of that today. For the tale we have is about the Birdcage Theatre in Tombstone. All okay?
Yeah, she's just being a bit naughty.
Oh, cheeky. We do have a guest today. It's Nala again. She snuck her way into the room when we hit record, so we'll see how long she behaves.
I feel like she's at time.
She heard Birdcage and was like, right, I'm in.
You can't...
Do we need to remove her?
If she jumps up on the keyboard again, we do.
Yeah, okay.
Because I don't think it's going to work too well with her touching the keys.
No.
Willing to give it a shot before then, though.
Okay, let's go. If Tombstone truly was the most devilish town in the West, then the Birdcage Theatre was its belly. The notorious theatre was established in 1881 and kept its doors open until 1889, when flooded mines and plummeting silver prices reduced Tombstone to a virtual ghost town. During the 9 years it was open, the Birdcage Theatre was generally acknowledged as the epicentre of madness in Tombstone. In 1882, the New York Times described the vaudeville house as the wildest, wickedest night spot between Basin Street and the Barbary Coast. So even when it was a functional town, Tombstone was known to be fucked.
So I started rewatching Westworld,
okay.
which is... Do you know Westworld?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Season 1 was good.
Yeah, and for any listeners that don't know what Westworld is a TV show that revolves around creating like AI cyber entertainment where you have like AIs that act and move around. Or like
it's Jurassic Park, but with cowboy robots.
Thank you. I wasn't doing well there.
And it's by Michael Crichton. Surprise.
Yeah, so one of the things about it was the fact that people really love to immerse themselves into this old-fashioned, dangerous world that was Western. Because the idea of the West is so romantic, but in reality, like, it would have been horrible, dangerous, smelly, gross, disease-ridden, But, I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of this. I'm incredibly guilty of this. Like, if there was a Westworld themed park, I would go to it for sure. Because our imagination of the West comes from watching television shows and movies where, as far as we know, everything's clean.
Yeah, clean and beautiful and shiny and absolutely not a dysentery-riddled hellhole of drunks with guns.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where life expectancy is low.
Where life expectancy is less than the big blind.
The big blind?
Yeah, of the poker game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That tracks.
Yeah. I'm just seeding some poker references.
Ooh, it's a poker story?
Oh, maybe. Ooh. Every night, countless booze-soaked dramas would play themselves out in the gaslit confines of the lively theatre. A soused gunslinger would glare at a long-hated rival from behind a hand of cards as his right hand slowly fell to the shooting iron at his hip. A lovesick miner would be trying his best to convince one of the house's prostitutes that she could leave her life of sin and join him on his claim as his wife. A disbelieving man would win a small fortune in a single game of Pharaoh.
What's Pharaoh?
I'm glad you asked. Pharaoh is an old-timey card game.
Okay.
I looked up a lot of information about Pharaoh and none of it's important.
Fair enough.
No, Pharaoh.
I get it,
yeah. While another card player, a few tables over, watched in despair as he lost a year of his earnings with one misplaced bet. And in the 14 curtained cribs hanging over all this, ladies of the night plied their immoral trade. So,
a lot of prostitutes in the West, I tell you.
Yeah. Well, the men do the mining and the gambling and the drinking and the shooting. What do the women do?
I feel like I know the answer to this.
Turns out they hang from the ceiling in a cage
No, they don't.
Yeah, that's what that's talking about. The Birdcage Theatre is named after the cages hanging from the roof that the women would dance in. That's where that trope comes from.
Do you know what? I've never seen that in a film.
Have you not?
Like women being like hanging from the ceiling in cages in a Western film? No, I've not.
In a Western film. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I've seen women like doing like dancing in cages in like dance clubs in modern society. Not in real life, again, also in film.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Bucket list item.
Yeah. Would you like to see a photograph of the Birdcage Theatre?
I would love that.
Unfortunately, it's of the front facade. Sorry.
Well, that's not very exciting at all.
Yeah, the book tries. The book does not deliver. Emotions ran high in the Birdcage Theatre, and more than one festering resentment boiled over into violence. There are over 140 bullet holes in the walls and ceiling of the theatre caused by the 16 gunfights that were said to take place there. How good are you at maths, Ollie?
I feel like what you're about to ask me is pretty fundamental math, but...
No, I was curious. I did the maths. 140 divided by 16 is an average of 8.75 bullets fired in each of these fights.
Okay.
Which you will recognise is more than 6.
Okay.
So that's at least 2 people firing most of their gun.
Right.
In each of these fights.
You'd think there'd be more than 2 people fighting in the gunfight, or is it just normally just 2 people?
I'm guessing this is over one poker hand gone wrong.
Right.
And it's 2 guys, 1 gun each. This is a violent theatre.
Well, you'd think they'd have them like check the guns at the door or something.
In America?
In America. Unlikely.
I mean, like, earlier this week somebody shot at former President Trump, so, I mean, things haven't changed much.
I've made a conscious effort to not discuss that, Callum.
Okay. Moving on. Hey? Either way.
Touchy water, my friend. Touchy water.
Guns.
It's not a time to be joking. It is too soon.
Not by the time this episode comes out. It might not come as such a surprise, then, that the Birdcage Theatre is considered one of the most haunted places in town. Today, the Birdcage is a museum offering an immaculately preserved exhibition of Tombstone's wilder years. Many would say that it offers so much more. The first accounts of strange happenings in the theatre began shortly after it reopened to the public in 1934. Closed since the last patron threw back his last glass of whiskey in 1889, the theatre had been abandoned for nearly half a century. It quickly became apparent, however, that there were forces in the Birdcage unconcerned with the passage of time.
What does that mean?
Ghosts.
Oh, the ghost, sorry. Cool. Sure, of course. You know, now that you say it, that makes a lot of sense. So the ghosts of past performers.
Maybe performers. Maybe something else.
Do tell.
I will. Or the book will. Anyway, Dan Asfar will tell.
Sure.
While the first visitors to the old theatre-turned-museum were treated to artefacts from a time past, many of these early Western enthusiasts were far more impressed by the bizarre and frightening phenomena occurring in the building. Early visitors were surprised to hear the sounds of a distant party. Distant voices were singing old folk songs, boisterous peals of men's laughter could be heard faintly, and a whiff of cigar smoke could be smelled on the air. I want you to cast your mind back a couple of weeks when we were very, very briefly discussing tobacco products and how that smell just fucking hangs around everywhere forever. Right?
Honestly, I don't think I used to notice it as much as I do now because it was so much more prevalent in society when I was younger than it is today. So, like, when I was...
And in the 1880s, everyone was smoking all the time, everywhere.
But honestly, like, when I was a teenager and people, like, smoked and smoking was everywhere, you didn't notice it as much because you're so used to the smell. I know the 2010s, around that era, when I started noticing the smell more and more because, like, smoking became banned in restaurants, in pubs, in public places. So I think we got more used to the lack of a cigarette smell.
As you got more and more used to the lack of parties in your life, did you start noticing the ghostly sounds of laughter more and more, though?
No, I wasn't going along the lines of remembering the ghostly smell, the smell of a smoker that has long since left this world.
Yeah. Like a good 50 years prior.
Well, I think if smoking was less common, you might pick up on the ghost smell of the tobacco emanating from that ghost more.
That's a good point, because they're saying people started noticing this in the 30s, and I still think of the 30s as cigarette central.
Totally, yeah.
So it must have been significant for them to say, it smells like cigars in here.
Yeah, actually, I feel like you're making a really good point here, because I'm pretty sure that
they do smell different.
They smell different. They smell more pronounced than cigarettes, I think.
Yeah.
However, I'm surprised they could really smell cigars or cigarettes over the smell of cigars and cigarettes.
Yeah. Witnesses would head downstairs, convinced that some sort of party was going on in the basement. But all they would find when they got there was the abandoned poker room. History's longest poker game was played in this room during the 1880s. Running non-stop, so it is said, for how long do you think this poker game went for? Now, I will say, this is people joining and leaving the table, but the game never officially ended.
72 hours?
72 hours. You think the world's longest poker game was 72 hours long? No, don't you go Google that. Get out of here. I've got the answer.
Okay, 7 days.
7 days. That's more like it.
I wasn't going to Google it. I was going to do a quick calculation for some random hours, that's all.
Sure. Would you be surprised to learn that it went for 8 years, 5 months and 3 days?
I would be very surprised. 8 years that
Yes.
game lasted.
One single poker game. Again, people coming and leaving.
Sure.
All continuous, no break.
Right, so it would have had to be running 24 hours a day for 8 years.
It sure was. I had to look this up because it was madness. It ran 24/7 in the basement of the Birdcage Theatre. Right? It was $1,000 buy-in back then, not now. Back then, so that is about $30,000 today, or about 45,000 Australian dollars today, to get in on the game. Over the course of the 8 years and change, $10 million changed hands.
Which would be the equivalent of what today?
$30 million or about 45 Australian dollars.
45 million Australian?
Yes.
Wow.
Now, 10% of all of the winnings went to the house. So they raked in $1 million from these people playing. You can see why this poker game kept going and going and going and going and going.
Yeah. Clearly they did well.
Until a fight broke out. No, it turns out the game ended when the place flooded. Everyone just packed up and left. They're like, nah, we're out of here. So, no official winner.
No players going down with the ship?
No. With the chip?
Ha 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 ha.
The sounds of distant revelry would stop the moment anyone opened the door to this room, though chilled witnesses would later swear that there was something intangibly eerie about the silent room and its unoccupied chairs, as if, somehow, invisible gamblers were still sitting on them, waiting for everyone to leave before they commenced their game.
If the game was going for 8 years continuously, and then eventually they left because it was flooding, usually you'd have ghosts that died doing the thing, right? They're not...
They may have drowned, I don't know.
I just don't... Unless they've got reports of poker players having a heart attack at the table.
I do wonder. I didn't find any reports of anyone dying during this particular game, which is unusual, but I guess if a gunfight breaks out during this game, I think you'd call it over, right? Yes. That would stop the game.
Presumably.
Yeah. You'd hope so, but then again, this is Tombstone in the 1880s, so who knows?
Sorry, can I just... One second? I made a mistake. I didn't realise what I was doing at the time until it was too late. So, another random story from Ollie's life. So basically what happened was, I picked up a wasabi pea, I put it into my mouth, And then I realized that I couldn't chew it because it would be too loud for the microphone.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there holding this like flavorless piece of.
Hang on, are you telling a story from your life that's happening right now?
I'm getting to a point.
Okay.
So I'm like sitting there, and actually reminded me. You know how you have these like random little core memories in your life? I have this really core memory in my life of when I was in Army Cadets as a kid.
Uh-huh.
And when I was getting dropped off to cadets, I grabbed a couple of pieces of chewing gum. And I was like, and I started just chewing gum, as you do. And then
the drill sergeant came around.
No, but then what you have to usually do there is you have to stand on parade for a while. So like I'm standing there, like standing at ease on the parade, you know, standing as still as you can while, you know, they're doing inspection. And I'm realizing that I can't spit out my chewing gum.
Oh.
So it just sits there like in my mouth like the entire time. And one thing I never knew about chewing gum until that moment is that if you have chewing gum in your mouth long enough, it just turns into liquid. So at some point I've just got this like...
How long would you have this gum?
It was like half an hour to an hour.
As in like you weren't chewing it?
No, I was kind of sitting there, yeah.
Oh, right. So I guess if you chew it, it doesn't turn into liquid?
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I haven't done the experiment. Like this, I'm just telling you that like I was sitting there and eventually just turned into liquid. And I just had this like awkward liquid sitting in my mouth and I couldn't talk. And until like eventually like I was, you know, they dismissed us and I like ran to the trash and like spat out everything that was in my mouth.
I think it's okay to swallow one piece of... Wait. Was it one piece of chewing gum?
It was a couple.
Oh, God.
But,
okay.
You know, it was like I didn't want to swallow it because it was back then when people used to talk about how you're not supposed to swallow gum.
I should hope people still talk about that today because I still don't think you're meant to swallow gum.
Sure. But like at some point it just got too gross to want to swallow it. Like, I didn't want to swallow the weird liquid thing that was splashing around my mouth. Anyway.
You would not do well with chewing tobacco then, would you?
Oh my God, chewing tobacco... And I'm sorry for anyone that loves chewing tobacco.
I don't think anyone loves it, do they?
I hope not. You'd do it if you loved it, right? You wouldn't just do it for because like
I think you do it because you're addicted to tobacco.
But like there's other ways to get tobacco. You don't have to chew it. Chewing tobacco just seems like the most disgusting habit of all. I think chewing tobacco is way more disgusting than smoking.
Yeah.
Like
agreed.
it's like all over your mouth. It's so gross. Like
I mean, we couldn't not have an Old West story without making a whoop, like spittoon sound. I'm not going to spit out a pea at a pot in here or anything, but
yeah, that was a gross invention, wasn't it? Like having like chewing tobacco and then people like spitting it out.
Just imagine just like a bunch of metal vases just scattered around a room that people just spit this disgusting chewed up tobacco into.
I wonder how like badly establishments used to smell back then. Like I just think it would be horrible, right?
Well, it's so bad that it hung around 50 years.
Well, so is it the smell of the chewing tobacco or the smell of cigars?
Cigar smoke, but
okay.
Yeah. Other people claimed to hear the sound of a woman singing faintly in one of the second-floor cribs overlooking the main room.
What's a crib?
Like the cage, the bird cages that are hanging from the roof.
Look, I thought it might have been a bird cage, but you didn't say bird cage, and I was very confused.
It was weird that it said crib, but I think if you're the author, you try and avoid using the word cage too many times.
Do you think they made him sing in the cage?
Yeah.
I don't know what. I don't know if that's better or worse or exactly the same, but in my mind, that feels worse because I feel like there's like dancing in a cage is like one thing.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know.
I know why the caged bird sings, but in this case, birds is women.
But to have him like sing in a cage seems, I don't know, for some weird reason it feels more cruel. I don't know why.
This is Tombstone in the 1880s. The singing would grow clearer when witnesses ventured up to the second floor, but it would cease before anyone could get too close to any of the cribs. There were other reports as well. People spoke of hearing spur-jangling footsteps walking across the main room on the first floor when there was no one there. Look, I'll be the first to say, because I frequently am, that creaky old buildings can often sound like there's like someone walking across floorboards.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how to account for spurs jangling too.
I can.
You can?
Yeah. Ghosts.
Is it... Fuck.
The ghosty cowboys.
Yeah, you're proud of yourself, aren't you?
Slightly. I don't know. I feel like that was too easy.
You seriously had me there for a minute.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that sound. It's so iconic, isn't it?
Yeah.
That I can hear it in my mind's eye at the moment. It's like the rustle of the spurs on the back of it. Although, unfortunately, they're actually quite cruel devices. But let's not think about that.
Yeah, they are meant for digging into the horse, unfortunately.
Let's not think about that.
Oh, okay. Sometimes the disembodied footsteps would come incredibly close to visitors, passing within mere inches of frazzled witnesses, but even then the phantom presence would remain invisible to human eyes. Or rather, to some people's eyes. For there were also those who claimed to spot the purported phantom as he made his way across the birdcage's main room. He appeared as a semi-translucent figure in a black suit, wearing a big black cowboy hat on his head. I don't know where else you'd wear it.
For me, it kind of conjures up images of like the Black Knight, but like the Black Cowboy.
I was sure we were going to get some more Westworld there, but...
Oh,
no,
right.
Monty Python, huh?
But no, you're right. There was a character in Westworld that was dressed in all black.
Yeah. Because it used to be the bad guys in Westerns who wore black hats.
Look, it makes it clear. That guy. Bad guy.
You cannot have any nuance between 1920 and 1960-something. That's the Hays Code, that is.
I think the Black Knight was always kind of necessarily like a bad knight as well, right? You wear black, it's bad. Look, it's a damn shame because it's slimming. Like
he ended up weighing a lot less
because he's a ghost.
No, because he lost all his limbs.
Oh, in Monty Python.
Come on. Oh, good point. Yes, I expect this cowboy also lost a considerable amount of weight when he died.
I honestly wasn't sure what you were referring to, but yes, come back here. I'll bite your arm off or something.
I'll bite your legs off.
Bite your legs off. Yeah. You've got to admit, the Black Knight in Monty Python is a story of perseverance in the face of adversity.
Story of bloody-mindedness. Witnesses could make out enough to note that he walked with a casual stride, and that his hair was black as pitch, but the apparition has always vanished before anyone could discern much more. Things at the birdcage haven't changed much since the building was reopened in 1934. Now, as then, many of the visitors claim to see and hear inexplicable phenomena.
Phenomenon.
The occurrences themselves have remained remarkably constant over the last 70 years. For the most part, what was reported then is still reported today, giving the Birdcage Theatre as much of an allure among supernatural enthusiasts as it has with history buffs. We're going to get some supernatural enthusiasts into this story.
Looking forward to it.
The theatre has gotten a good deal of attention from paranormal societies, many of which have worked to clarify the phenomena there. According to some of these societies' investigations, the birdcage is every bit as haunted as its past might suggest. While psychics have been able to detect a large confluence of restless souls, more scientifically oriented organisations have amassed a number of photographs and video and audio recordings suggesting that the birdcage might indeed house a whole group of ghosts. Okay, so the psychics say there's a large confluence of restless souls, but the scientists say there's a whole group of ghosts. I can't spot the difference between those two statements. Ollie, what is the difference? That's the same thing, isn't it?
Well, first of all, clearly the scientists are using the scientific method.
Yeah.
And they have deduced...
night vision cameras, spirit boxes, Ouija boards.
When was the book written?
Oh, good question. The book was written in...
I don't know when night goggles were invented, but... 2003.
Sorry, that was the book. Night vision goggles have been around a little longer than that.
So you're saying scientists of the year 2003 have deduced that there are ghosts in this establishment?
Indeed, the Southwest Ghost Hunters Association has reported that as many as 31 revenants might be haunting the theatre.
Are they the scientists?
It doesn't say. That could be... That could be the psychics or the scientifically oriented organization.
Scientifically orientated. I like how you've put a spin on that.
Book words, not Callum words.
Oh, that was book words. There you go. Well, look, from my perspective, I think that we've got a pretty solid, conclusive evidence here. This is ghosts.
Oh, fucking hell.
Let's go with it. I mean, obviously,
we're not done with investigations.
Obviously, I'd be happier if we had a photo of the Black Cowboy.
Oh, the only photograph of this place in the book is of the facade that I showed you earlier.
Yeah, no, that is funny.
However, we're about to meet someone who's going to recur in some of the later Tombstone stories here.
You know, it's funny. My mind drifted to the fact that I really wish that I had a photo of the cages because I just have a morbid sense of curiosity.
After the episode, we can Google pictures of the inside of the Birdcage Theatre, I'm sure.
It does sound like a torture device. I know it's not, but you must admit...
Well, you speak to some of those showgirls. I mean...
The idea of a pedestal with like bars around it in a nightclub with a girl dancing seems like one thing, but then putting someone in a hanging bird cage and getting him to dance and sing feels like a very different thing.
It feels very Tombstone. Ain't no laws around here.
I'm genuinely wondering if like we've been making westerns and
all wrong.
No, they've been making westerns. They've looked up the historical data and they've thought, nah.
People will not believe this,
or they might not like it. Like, honestly, I was like, oh, don't think we need to be that historically accurate.
Yeah. All right. Angel Brandt, a gifted psychic who lives in Mesa, Arizona, doesn't dispute that there are supernatural entities in the birdcage. Quote, "There's lots of ethereal energy in the building. Much of it comes from the objects on display, so many of which transmit the energy of their former owners, and then, of course, a lot of it comes from the excitement and drama that took place there when it was open. Energy like that just doesn't go away."
I do think that is a really interesting theory that ghosts, they're echoes of the past. You know, the idea of something being an echo of the past would mean that it's like the energy of that person or thing happening in that place
Etched itself into the environment somehow?
It's etched itself into the environment somehow. And kind of like, I've heard like a scientific theory before that time itself is like an illusion, right? Because like...
we're getting deep today.
Like from a physics perspective, everything is happening all at the same time. So
sure. Time is merely another dimension.
Exactly. So we see time from a linear perspective. We have the past and the future. But there are people that theorize that what you do in the present could actually affect the past. Now, obviously, that's crazy. And obviously, even if it was true, it'd be super hard to wrap your head around, right? Because it's like, how do you even justify that in your mind? It just sounds crazy. You know,
Can I recommend that you read the book Arrival sometime?
The book Arrival?
Yeah. You might have seen the film, but the book is a whole different beast.
So that makes more sense than ghosts that of those people have gone to other places and died, and then their ghosts have floated back to still play this long game of poker. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. More echoes, less BBC's ghosts.
Yeah. Assuming that all of this stuff could be potentially true, obviously, then I think that could be like two different types of paranormal activity.
Yeah, an echo and a poltergeist.
That is my rant over.
All right. Well, Angel Brandt seems to believe the former of those, the echo one, as we'll see.
Oh, really? So,
yeah.
So I actually nail something?
Maybe.
Oh, good for me.
That being said, Angel herself has only ever detected one specific spirit in the birdcage. Quote, "The first time I felt his presence was when a good friend and I went to visit. We were walking up to the backstage area on the main floor when we both smelled this really strong cigar odour. It was like there was someone right there smoking a big stinky cigar, but the only people in the area were my friend and I." End quote.
My friend, stinky cigar.
The pair went back down to the main floor where they saw the only other person in the theatre. Begin quote. "We asked this man if he had been smoking a cigar, and he told us that he hadn't. So then we asked him to come up backstage, just to see if he'd smell the same thing. When the trio got back to the area, the cigar smell had completely dissipated. But whoever had been smoking it apparently was still there. Neither me nor my friend felt anything, but the guy that was there with us suddenly looked really surprised and sort of scared. We followed him back down to the main floor, where he told us that something backstage had been pushing him away by the chest. It was like there was someone there who didn't want him to be backstage. Actually, this is starting to sound more like the latter, the conscious one, isn't it?
Maybe in hauntings such as these, it's a mix of both.
Yeah. Ghosts,
Echoes.
they don't follow no rules.
Ooh, maybe the entity is replaying the echoes as memories.
Maybe lots of things. But all three were mystified by the experience.
I would be.
Yeah. Until Angel came up with an informative bit of history on the building. So the psychic woman has just pulled this out of her memory banks? Thin air? Who's to say?
Other orifices?
No, that's ectoplasm.
That's good. That was a good one.
Quote, "It turns out that there used to be this stage manager who worked backstage," Angel explains. "And during the birdcage's busiest time, his job was also to keep the men away from the dancing girls and the women who were in the cribs upstairs. Angel also discovered that this man was scarcely seen without a big malodorous Mexican cigar jutting from his mouth. Angel is sure that they had encountered the spirit of this stage manager that day. It is fitting that his spirit, who had guarded so many female performers from the male audience when he was alive, would hold back the only male in the trio while allowing the two women to get by. It seems that even in the afterlife, the spirit of this resolute stage manager continues to do his job, keeping the rough rabble of male visitors away from the women." Quote again, "I sense that this man loved his job," Angel says. "That's why he's there. He loved working at the birdcage so much that he hasn't been able to let it go yet." The end. So, echo or poltergeist spirit?
Both.
Both. Okay, all right.
I'm on the both train.
God damn. So we'll come up with some rules and immediately throw them out the window, like so many saloon patrons in westerns.
Look, I'm pretty good at that. But yeah, no, definitely feel like it's both.
Okay.
And I have this lovely crackpot theory that involves the idea that the ghostly entity actually has the power to bring their replayed memories into the present. So
okay.
So it's they're such a powerful entity that they're actually
they can cast their memories as a spell.
Yes. Just like that. Manifesting their memories and ghostly memories.
A mnemonomancer.
What?
Mnemonomancer.
Mnemonomancer?
Yeah.
It's obviously not a necromancer.
Well, a necromancer has necrotic spells, right?
Power of the dead!
Have spells related to the dead. Whereas a mnemonomancer have spells related to mnemonics, memory.
Was that an actual term, or did you just make that up?
No, I just made that up.
Oh, good. No, it's good. I like it. One of my favourite computer game characters was a necromancer. And
I wonder if I can guess which one.
Diablo? Oh, you're just guessing game? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
No, cool.
Well, I don't think the necromancer in Diablo has a name, does he? Aside from what you named them.
Oh, the necromancer that I was thinking of did-ish, I think. But I can't remember the actual name. But just for
Favorite
fun...
character, huh?
But just for fun, you can try and guess the game.
What do I get, 3 guesses?
Sure, 3 guesses.
All right. Diablo, Diablo 2, and Overlord?
It was Warcraft 3.
Damn it!
And he was essentially a knight that died. Or a knight that got turned into a necromancer. I think it was an ice knight or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He was a knight.
He was a nice knight.
He was a knight. He was a nice knight, and then he was human, and then he got turned into a necromancer. It was an undead knight.
Okay.
And he used to have a spell that would bring undead characters back to life and to fight in his war. And when you cast that spell, you would essentially like kill one of your soldiers and take their life force. And
Oh, he's a villain.
well,
An enemy?
I mean, like I used to play, you know.
Oh, it's Warcraft. You can do both, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's an enemy really? No. What's a bad character? I mean, I played as the character.
Yeah.
So-
Golf Ollie.
Depends on your priorities, right? But I think that there's a lot of things in life that, you know, sometimes I romanticize in the past, and then I think of the reality of it now, and I think, oh, well, that would actually be quite disgusting.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just like with the West.
Yeah. Hey. Hang on, I'm taking the gloves off for that one. You get a proper applause.
I brought it back around.
Yeah, well done. You did. Well, I think that's got to be it for this episode of Secondhand Haunting, but do you want to do some more Old West stories in future episodes?
I do, and I feel like I had an overly ranty episode. I went off on a lot of tangents. I might, you know, try and focus on the actual story of the next one.
Oh, there wasn't much of one. But I got to say, Angel Brant shows up in another story from Tombstone with one of the more unusual manifestations of ghosts I've ever seen.
There you go.
So we'll look forward to that one.
I personally am a big fan of the West, and as horrible as it must have been, I think it's a really fascinating look at, you know, human history that we put people in cages and hung them from the roof.
Okay, all right. As a little outro to the episode, do you want to quickly Google what the interior of the Birdcage Theatre looked like?
I do indeed.
All right.
Do a little what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Not sure if I can see it. Like, I have found photos of it, but I haven't found any that actually have the cage hanging down to cover up.
It doesn't exist.
I feel like I found... No. I feel like I found nothing. It's actually more of a horror exhibit, it seems.
I think it was a bit of a horror show back then too. Hey! All right. And we'll have some more horror shows in future episodes of Secondhand Haunting. Jesus.
That was good.
All right, cut. That's a wrap.